So the challenges mentioned are actually challenges that our children may feel as well. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into some of the possible adjustments that our children may have to make. Okay. So first, let's look at what we can observe. Let's look at the physical environment that our children are going to experience. So typically in Singapore, right, our preschools are located in the heartlands or really generally near to our homes, really for convenience, and so that we can cater to different children. So because of this, what it also means is that in general, the sizes of our preschools are a bit smaller, especially if you compare this to the sizes of primary schools, which typically maybe they have their own field, they are able to house many more children, many more adults and things like that. So now you may be thinking, why is this important, right? Like, so what if the place they are going to is bigger? It's still a school, it's the same thing. So why this is important is because of the sheer size of their primary schools, it also means that in most primary schools, they have designated areas for different purposes. For example, when you have your lunch or when you have recess, you have to do it in the canteen. You can't stay in your classroom, right? Or if you're going for PE classes, you have to transit, you have to go to a different area, maybe the field or the indoor sports hall, for example. So what this means is that children, they have a lot of information to download. They have to learn how to navigate a big and unfamiliar territory. And that starts from day one, very first day they enter the school. So this can be quite daunting for children, especially children who are not used to traveling around by themselves or traveling in unfamiliar places. So that's one thing. So that's about the size of the school. So if we zoom in a little bit more and we look at the size of the classroom or the physical environment of the classroom itself, in preschools, activities tend to be held within a very small area, within the same area, in fact, for most preschools who are smaller in sizes. For example, if you walk into their classroom, you may see a reading corner. You might see another corner for their tea break. You might see a corner for play, a play area, and then you might see the tables and chairs for their writing purposes. So everything is generally confined into one space. However, if you look at the primary school classroom, generally, as mentioned already, they have to transit to different rooms, to different areas for different learning purposes. And also within the classroom, they do not have curated spaces that are carved out for special learning purposes. Instead, what they're expected to do is kind of sit at the table, sit at their desk, and learn via a pretty constant medium. So it's very typical for children to learn by watching or listening to the teacher who's standing in front, speaking via the projector or showing stuff via the whiteboard. All right. So why this is important and why this may be a struggle or is a very different transition is because children may not be used to learning during this modality. They may not be used to sitting at their desk for long periods of time, right? And they may not be used to being so far away from their teacher. If you think back again about a preschool setting, typically the teachers are situated very close to the children. And they actually do that intentionally so that they're able to redirect their focus when necessary. They're able to manage misbehaviors, for example, and they're able to ensure that the children stay engaged throughout their learning. But if you look again at a primary school setting, typically the teacher will be all the way in front. So imagine you're a young child who's sitting all the way at the back of your classroom. At the stage they're in, at their developmental stage, it's difficult for a young child to be able to sustain long periods of attention independently. Right? The young child, being so far away from the teacher, may also feel shy. They may feel scared to ask for help when needed. What this means is that it may potentially lead to decreased engagement in their learning, decreased focus, etc., etc. So this is something that children have to transit from their preschool environment to primary school environment, where they have to build a lot more independence in terms of managing their own learning. All right, so this is actually one big obstacle that we have. And this is reflected actually by what parents tell us. I have many P1 children. The parents who tell us that, actually when their children transit, they realize that the children come home and tell them, actually, I didn't understand what was going on in class. Yeah. All right. Okay, so this is really about the physical aspect. So let's move on to talk about the social aspect. So the social aspect is another huge aspect that they have to adjust and adapt to. So firstly, they have to make new friends. And we all know how daunting that can be. Even as adults, it's really difficult to make new friends because they're essentially starting from zero. You have to establish new connections. You have to find people you can click with, etc., etc. And being in a bigger place with more children, it also means that friendships can become more complicated. There is social pressure, especially I think now with the age of media, children are getting exposed to many things online. So the social pressure may be a lot more compared to when they were younger and they were using less social media. The other thing will also be with so many people in their class or available for them to choose from to make friends with, who and how are they going to choose who are going to become their friends, right? So that's another really complicated issue for them to grapple with. And the other thing, outside of their own classroom, imagine again in a common area, for example, the canteen where they go to for recess. Simply because of the number of students in the school compared to preschool, there's definitely going to be more noise, more activity, more stimulation, and that can be very overwhelming for a young child who has not been exposed to big crowds like this, right? So that's one of the social aspects that you may have to grapple with. And of course, in school, we don't only have our peers, right? We also have the very important adult figures, their teachers. So the difference between the preschool setting and the primary setting is that in preschool, generally the classes are slightly smaller than the primary school classes. They also tend to have an assistant teacher. So usually we have two sort of main teachers tagged to a class. And for your child, if he or she has been very lucky throughout their preschool years, it may mean that the teachers have been following them up through their formative years. And that is really important because that means that they probably will have formed a very secure, a very safe attachment with these primary adult figures. However, as they transit into a new setting, in the primary school setting, this means that they're going to have new teachers who are essentially strangers to them. So your child again has to readapt to this new human being, this new adult figure, and they have to learn new social rules and social conventions as well. So for example, maybe new classroom rules or new school rules that they have to adapt to. Right, so this is again another form of learning that they have to go through, and this may present as another challenge to them as well. Right.
Sorry, and Miss Jade, I was just wondering, as you're talking about the teachers, is it safe to assume that in a primary school they will actually face many more teachers in primary one compared to preschool?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And I think that in general, yes, we would expect that to be the case because in primary school, they have more subjects, right? So their learning is more subject oriented as well. So some schools may have specialized teachers that specialize in teaching math, in Chinese, and even when they go for PE, it's likely that it's going to be a different teacher. Or if they have music classes, art classes, computer classes, those are going to be new faces that they see. So yes, you're exactly right in pointing that out.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move on and we're going to talk about the next aspect, which is equally, or if not, I feel the most important, to be honest, it's the emotional aspect. Okay, so as we all know, a happy child is a child that is open to learning. A child who is burdened, with negative emotions, a lot of stress, they don't have the extra cognitive ability to take in new information to support their learning. So it's very important that we address any emotional issues or challenges that the child may have. So this is a very simple feeling chart. And it just lists some of the basic emotions that your child may experience. For example, your child may feel happy at going to a new school. At the same time, your child may feel worried at going to the school as well. Right? So these feelings are not mutually exclusive. And I think as adults, we also know that, at any second, we can be experiencing multiple emotions at the same time. So why this is really important is because we need to take a step back and we need to think about this in terms of a child developmental stage theory. So children age 6, 7, 8, and younger, basically they are actually in the early stage of developing emotional regulation. What this means is that while they feel the same feelings that we feel, they may not be able to articulate these feelings. They may not have the words for it. They may not be able to explain why they feel this way. And they may not have the adaptive strategies that we have to cope with all these feelings. Right? So what this may look like to us as adults may be in school, if something negative happens to your child, for example, and the teacher asks, "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" the child may not have the words to explain to the teacher what happened exactly, may not be able to tell the child to tell the teacher how the teacher can help him feel better. And then what this may translate to at home will be things like maybe after school, your child comes home and you're going through your normal routine and suddenly your child has a meltdown, seemingly out of nowhere. And you cannot figure out why your child is having a meltdown when you've been doing the same thing, every day. There's nothing special about it. So this may also be because they were unable to regulate their emotions in school, and that has a transference effect into their home environment. Right, so all these different emotions that they're feeling in school based on all the challenges that I've mentioned, this is something that I think we would like to keep in mind. And I think moving on later, we will share more strategies about how we can support our children through all this. Right, so I'm just going to take a quick pause here, okay? And I'm going to have blast out a question to all the parents out there. After listening to, all these potential challenges or maybe transitions that your child may have to make, how confident are you that your child is ready for P1? So maybe just a quick survey. You can just drop your answers in the chat from 1 to 10. 1 being, I'm not very confident he's going to survive day 1 independently. 10 would be, yeah, I'm super confident my child can go to P1 even now at this stage. So maybe I'll give you guys a quick few minutes to just drop your answers in the chat.
Or maybe we can do a poll. How about that?
Oh yeah, we could also do a poll. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Hugh.
I think we can do a
Yep.
poll.
Let's
Right.
do a poll.
Let me just launch a poll, okay?
So I'll let Mr. Hugh set up the poll.
Yeah, there we go.
Thank you.
Right. At this point, I think it's maybe we can address some of the questions. Actually, the two questions that we have right now are quite similar. Is asking about academics actually, right? So the first one is about whether the child needs to know about maths, reading, writing, etc. And the next question is basically commenting that the preschool that his or her child is at right now doesn't really focus much on academics. So does that mean this parent needs to send his or her child for extra tuition? So yeah, I mean, these are things probably that some other parents would like to know as well. Do anyone want to take that one? Maybe the one about knowing maths, English, reading, writing. I think that one is I think we all can probably say yes. Yes, they need to know, right? Yeah.
So I think for the first question, whether children in primary 1, do they need to go in knowing math, knowing how to read, knowing how to write? I think if you look at MOE guidelines, they would generally tell you, actually, no, we will teach them everything they need to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But based on past experience, and if you look at the work that they're expected to complete, we would say that children generally are expected to have a basic level of computation, of reading, and of writing. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I mean, like what you said, if we look at the requirements that are set up by MOE, as years go by, we know that actually if children are going in without that simple knowledge, right, they are actually at a disadvantage because you have other children who are already way more advanced. And I think as Ms. Jade pointed out earlier, in a big classroom setting where there's diverse ability, right, it's going to be harder to focus on the children who are lagging behind if we have some children or maybe even the majority of the children who are actually moving much quicker. So I think that's something that we have to also consider. Yeah. Yeah.
And also, the
yes.
thing is that in a big classroom setting in primary school, right? For example, in a math class, there's only one teacher to like maybe 40 students. Whereas in a preschool setting, a class of like 20 can have like 3 teachers. So there's the difference in attention that you can give to each student. That's quite a huge difference, I would say. So it will be good for them to have a good foundation in it, which will help them further like during lesson times. That will be much easier for them to understand and also to complete their work independently.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we can also address the second question. So I think a
Yep.
parent is asking, saying that my child is attending preschool, which is very play-based. So it's not academic focused.
Mm,
Should I send my child for tuition or extra
mm,
classes? So I
mm,
think this is quite a complicated question, to be honest. I think what I would suggest is usually a two-pronged approach. So usually what the two-pronged approach means, home support and external support. So home support will be what we as parents can do at home to help our children catch up or reach the place where they need to be. And this is something that we're going to cover later on as well. So I'm not going to go too much into details. The other one would be the external support. So it can come in the form of school, it can come in the form of external classes. And some parents opt to send their child for both of this.
Yep.
So there is no right or wrong answer per se, but I would say that if, let's say, you feel that the school isn't offering sufficient support, then you might want to consider a different external support. So it can be extra classes or it can be holiday camps, for example.
Okay. Well, we have one more question here, but this is not really about academics. This is about extra classes to learn things like swimming and things like that. So is it necessary for the child to, for example, know how to swim before joining primary school? I think for those specialized skills as such, I think they are not required to know that because they do have classes that teach specifically that skill in primary school. So you don't really need to send your child for, external classes before joining primary school. I mean, of course you can if you want to, but it's not necessary, I would say, at this point anyway. Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think let's go back to the poll, the results of the poll. So I think the majority of the parents are saying, I'm a little confident. So you want to be confident, but you're not really quite there yet. Okay, so I think maybe we can end the poll now. I'm just going to end the
Yeah.
poll and we're just going to look at some of the common concerns that I think parents have,
Sure.
which may be the reason for maybe our lack of confidence. So for example, can they cope with the demands of reading, writing, and math? And I think also not to forget, they also have Mandarin, right? Or their mother tongue language as well. Will my child be able to make new friends? Can my child settle in, or will they have a big struggle? What if my child is reluctant to ask for help and he or she is struggling by herself and no one is going to offer the support? I think these are some common concerns, and if along the way you have any new concerns, feel free to share it with us as well. So I think moving on, I'm going to pass the time to Ms. Present, who is going to address some of these concerns and explain how, as parents, we can offer support to our children in this transition period.
All right, thank you. So, first, I would like to share that as parents, you're actually role models to like your child. They see you as role models. They want to be like you. They wish to be like you because my students tell me every day, Miss Christian, I would like to be like my daddy. I would like to be like my mommy. They love their parents so much that they want to be like them. So, but as a parent, you may not actually understand how your child is actually feeling on the inside. So, at the start of the school year, when they transition to primary one, they might be afraid, they might be lost, they might not know what is going on, where are they supposed to go. What we try to aim here is to get them to cross over the bridge to become confident, to be receptive, and to be brave, and to accept any challenges that comes their way. So main things that you have to take note of is definitely to listen, because we don't understand them until we listen to how they actually feel. And also, as a third person point of view, we can observe them. We see how they act. We see how do they react to different situations. We can talk to them and also offer them a solution, or better, we can come up with a solution together with your child so that it's a solution that both the parent and the child can accept, and it's more comfortable for them to actually follow through the solution that they come up with themselves. So what are some of the things that you can do? So first, like what I mentioned, listen to your child, because no one knows themselves better than your child themselves. So we have to listen, we have to go down to their level and try to understand how are they actually feeling? What is causing them to feel this way? What are some things that actually make them feel this emotion that they have inside them? So we will never understand them until we actually listen and we understand their perspective and what is going on around them. So listening is very important because it shows your child that you are physically and mentally there for them. So you are their support. So listening is showing them that you are there to support them along this whole journey, this whole transition to primary one. And next also is to talk about school positively, because you don't want to overwhelm your child and to scare them like, oh, the teachers are going to be very fierce. They are going to be more worried. The teachers are going to be very strict. Oh, they are going to be afraid. So of course, we want to bring the conversation to them positively. We want them to have a positive this positive thing, the thought about school, so they can look forward to it instead of dreading it, like, oh, I don't want to go to school. The teachers are going to be so strict. They're going to be so angry. We want them to see it positively so that they can look forward to it. So there are many different ways that we can go about. So one aspect, they can, for example, homework. When they go to primary school, I'm sure homework is going to be something that they can expect every week. So there are two ways they can see homework. They can see as, oh, it's important. I have to do my homework and I shouldn't copy others. I have to do it on my own. And it's good for me to have homework because I can practice, I can test my knowledge. But on the other hand, if we don't actually talk about school positively, they might think of, oh, I have a lot of homework. I have to do it. I have no choice. My teacher gave me so much homework that I cannot cope. So these are things that we don't want them to think of, because then it will get them more afraid and it will make them, I would say, dread, and they wouldn't want to be, they won't be looking forward to school as much as compared to how it will be if we talk about it positively. So definitely tell them good things. Tell them your own experiences. Oh, last time in my primary school, I did this, so that they can look forward to it. So they have this nice expectation that they might actually look forward to, so that they can experience something similar from what you did. And next also, it's very important, like what Ms. Jade mentioned, the school is much bigger. They have to navigate their way through the school. You have to get them to be independent. Establish independence and also to foster independence is extremely important. So something like, for example, meal times. In school, they have a specific time to follow for recess. They have to finish the meal within this 30 minutes and they have to head back to class. But in preschool, it's much more flexible in a sense. Oh, they're not done with their food, let's give them some more time. But in school, in primary school, you can't do that. So having fixed meal times, homework time, playtime, or bedtime is a good way to actually get them into the routine so they can be more independent, so that the transition to primary one will be much smoother, okay, and they won't be as overwhelmed as what we would want them to be. And also, it's good to have daily habits. For example, get them to shower at a specific time, get them to pack their bags or pack their rooms every single day or every single week. These are all good habits to have because they have to learn how to do it themselves, because in school, they don't have that much of an assistance compared to preschool. So definitely getting them to be independent and doing all these things all by themselves, it's a good way to start them for primary one. Okay, so actually there was a research conducted by NTU. So they actually interviewed a couple of preschool students and primary one students. So they asked them, how ready are you to actually buy your own food during recess? Because that's something preschoolers don't actually get to experience, because they just go and grab their food, they go back to their seat and they start eating. But in primary school, they get the choice to choose what food they want. How much is it? They have to pay for their food on their own. So all these are very different aspects compared to preschool. So NTU actually conducted research and they asked primary one students. So 93% of primary one students actually said that they were able to buy their own food. However, on the other hand, for K2 students, only 78% of them felt that they would know how to do so. So if you can see the difference in words, K2, they say they felt like they know they could do it. When P1, they say they know they can do it. So, and you can see the drastic change as around a 20% difference between the P1 and the K2s. So that's the thing. When we interact with them, when we go out with them on a daily basis, usually the parents will be the one purchasing the food for the children. But we have to create opportunities for them to actually buy their food on their own and to experience it on their own, for them to be confident enough to say, I can do it on my own. I don't need anyone's help. I will do it on my own. But over here, they said that 78% of K2 students felt that they would know how to do it. So in reality, would they be able to do it? Would they feel overwhelmed? Would they feel too nervous to do so on the first day of school? We will not actually know until the day comes. So it will be good to actually prepare them beforehand, get them to experience such things beforehand with people who they are comfortable with. For example, the parents. It's a good way to start. Okay, and next, definitely to manage expectations and anxiety. So like what Minship mentioned at the very start, we will feel nervous, we will feel anxious, like what is going on. So your child will definitely feel that way too. Our students will feel that way. So how are we going to help them to not get overwhelmed by these emotions? So introduce and talk about the transition early. I mean, they are going to start primary one now. It's a good time to start right now because they should know what is going to happen. They should expect what is going to happen. And it's good to get them to be mentally prepared for what is going to come for them. And also, we teach them emotional regulation because in such a big environment, things might happen and they might not know how to regulate how they're feeling. So giving them solutions and giving them ways to regulate their emotions are very good techniques to actually get them to calm themselves down and to think and to consider what they should do, what next steps they should take. Okay, and to also encourage social skills, reassure them about mistakes. I always tell my students, never be afraid to make mistakes. As long as you know that you can learn from it and then make sure we try our best to learn from it and to make sure we don't do it again. Mistakes are good because that's when we know that we are learning and that we are all human. I tell you, we are all human, we are not robots. So it's always good to make mistakes, just as long as we learn from it. And also validate their feelings. This is extremely important because we want to let them know that they are hurt. And it's totally fine for them to feel however they are feeling. As long as we know how to get past this obstacle, and then we move on from it. So we always have to let them know that they are hurt and that whatever they're feeling is logical and whatever they're feeling is totally reasonable.
Miss Chrisanne,
Mhm.
I like what you said about asking them or teaching them to regulate their emotions. Maybe you could give an example of something that the parents could do.
Okay, so first and foremost, first it depends on your child because some of them prefer some time to calm down before they can actually speak. So for those that actually prefers to, they get very agitated, they get very I would say overwhelmed, and they need some time to process. They couldn't speak now. They just want to scream. They just want to shout. Give them some time, 5 minutes maybe. If you're outside, you're like in a mall. Bring them to a corner. Stay with them, and tell them like I'll give you like 5 minutes. Maybe you can calm down, and we can talk about it later. So, and after that, once they calm down, you just ask them, what is going on? Could you please tell me why do you start screaming? Or why are you feeling this way? What happened? So it will be good to target the physical aspect. If it's something in the physical environment that causes them to feel that way, then we can fix it right away. But if it's something that is within them, like maybe like they thought about something that upsets them, then we can move about on like, oh, how do we solve the problem and how do we remove that obstacle? Yeah, so it's always good to, if your child is getting very agitated, bring them to one corner because the environment outside or at home, it may be because we have TV on or outside, we have lots of people walking around. It's good to bring them to a quiet corner, stay with them for them to calm down because it gets very, very overwhelming at times because there's so many things going on. So definitely it's good to bring them to a corner and of course listen.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the question. And next, of course, familiarizing the new school environment. So I have many of my students telling me like, oh, Miss Chrisanne, I've been to this primary school. I went for a field trip there. I bought food at during recess. I spoke to the teachers. I went to assembly. So they told me all these things that they did during their field trip to school. So it's good to actually bring your child around the school environment, school grounds. If you can't enter, just walk around it. Walk around it, tell them like, oh, that's the canteen, that's where you actually buy your food from, that's where the classrooms are, that's the music room, things like this. Or this is the general office. If there's anything that you need, just head to the general office. Get them familiarized with where they are going to be at for the next like 6 years. All right. And also role play is a very good way to actually get them to practice and to see how they will react in certain circumstances. And also to watch videos. There are also good resources online. Watch videos or look at photos of the school grounds. Google is the best place for you to look for all this. YouTube as well. And also to read books about transition, to read books about maybe to say, about new environments. There are many books like this to tell parents on what can they do and like what are the different emotions they can feel. And you can also read it to your child so that they understand what they have to expect from primary school. And next, supporting learning at home. So some questions were directed saying, oh, my child, does he or she needs to know how to read, write, and do math. So it's always good to start at home. So it's fine if you don't have any like tuition classes now, enrichment classes now, but it's always a good start at home because your child is comfortable with you. So very simple things that you can do at home. For example, start a reading routine. I always tell parents to read as much as you can because books are the best way to actually get them to understand, to learn, and for us to understand them actually. So reading allows the child to improve on reading fluency. So you can know if they can recognize the words, if they can blend the words, if they can read a proper sentence, or they are reading by chunks, and it helps them is to see if they understand what they're actually reading. So when I talk about check their understanding, it's sort of like comprehension. So comprehension is when you read a passage, you have to answer questions. So reading a book, you don't have to ask them to write down like the answers, but it's just like, oh, why do you think the boy felt that way? Then they can answer verbally. So that's how you know they actually understand what they are reading. And for math, you can also incorporate math in your daily lives. For example, have math conversations like, oh, how much do you think this bowl of noodles cost? How many coins do you need? Things like this. Or you can engage in math-related activities such as playing games at home. You can play like, for example, you can have bingo cards. You lay down the cards and you ask them, oh, what is 3 plus 2? And you have to pick up the card that signifies the total amount. So these are actually games that you can play and things that you can do at home to make learning fun and to also prepare them for what is to come for primary 1 academically. Okay, so next, Miss Shade, do you want to talk about whether to see if their child is ready for school?
Thank you, Ms. Chrisanne. So I think now we're going to touch on like the big topic at hand, right? Academic readiness. Can my child cope with his or her studies? So how we're going to run through this is basically in 2 big categories. One is the skills required. Does my child have the skills required to complete the work required? For example, like we mentioned, computation skills, reading skills, writing skills, etc. And also teaching modality. Is my child able to adapt and to adjust to the new teaching modality that's going to be used in primary school? All right, so I'm just going to talk about mathematics first, and later I'll pass the time over to Ms. Chrisanne to tell you a little bit more about the English curriculum. All right, so for mathematics, if you have been doing your research about preschools, recently there's a very big trend about preschools where they are focusing on play-based. They are focusing on Montessori. They are talking about inquiry-based. So these are the very big names that we hear nowadays for our preschool learning. And what they have in common is actually that they focus a lot on experiential learning, hands-on activities using manipulatives such as blocks, using tools such as maybe the 10 frames, they use cards, they use counters, they use dice, things that children can touch and explore to help them in their learning. So most preschools, this is how they teach mathematics to their children. However, if you look at the primary school setting, there is actually a big transition in the way mathematics is being taught. So children are expected to transit to doing a lot of pen and paper work, which can be very, very challenging for them because firstly, it's boring, it's not fun, there are no games, right? Secondly, at the developmental stage that they're in again, these children are very concrete thinkers. They don't need concrete materials to help them understand the concept. So it is difficult and it will be challenging for them to work solely based off words or pictures that they see printed on paper. So that's the difference in modality that they may have to adjust to, the teaching modality. The next one will be skills required. Okay, so typically in preschool, children are asked very direct questions. For example, what is 3 plus 8? And most preschoolers, they are able to answer this sort of questions. All right. Again, there is a big transition that they have to make when they go to primary school in terms of mathematics. Not only are they expected to answer direct questions, they're expected to apply their knowledge to different question types. So if we just look at the very first question on the right side, the one that says question number 3, it says, I'm a number greater than 7 plus 4, but smaller than 5 plus 8. What number am I? So we're all adults. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. You should probably be able to come up with the answers, right? Okay, so to us, it's actually very intuitive how we can find the answer. But to a primary 1 or K2 child, it's actually not that simple. So I'm going to just break down the levels of thinking that they have to go through for you to understand actually how difficult the transition may be for them. So firstly, they have to know what is 7 plus 4. And they have to know what is 5 plus 8. So these are skills that they have learned in preschool, computational skills, right? Next, they have to understand the phrase greater than 7 plus 4. What does that mean? They might know what is greater than 7, but do they know what does greater than 7 plus 4? What does that mean? What does smaller than 5 plus 8? What does that mean? Right? Most children, when they enter primary 1, they have no idea what these words mean. They know what they mean separately, but when you put them in a sentence, they just stare at you. All right? And then the next level they have to think about is, okay, now that they've understood those two phrases, when I put the whole sentence together, I am a number that is greater than 7 plus 4, but smaller than 5 plus 8. What does that mean now? Right? And once they have figured that entire sentence out, they now have to finally answer the question. And to answer the question, they then have to understand that I'm not going to be writing the actual answer in the bracket. I actually have to write the option number in the bracket. So that's another thing that they have to learn, right? Different question types. So this is just one example of how, a simple computation question, while the basic knowledge is the same, the skills needed are actually very different. Right? So this is a brief overview for mathematics. I'm going to hand it over to Miss Kristen now to talk about English.
All right, so for English, let me just talk about maybe story writing. So on the left is what we do in K2, which is where we plan the story. So we use the 5 W's and 1 H. But on the right is what we do in primary 1. So we get them to talk about the different parts of the story. We have the beginning, we have the conflict, we have the middle, resolution, and the end. So you can see the quite a drastic difference because on the left, we are just mainly planning. We don't really have like, oh, there must be a problem and things like this. But on the right, we have to have a clear distinction of which part and what is it talking about, which category is it under. But on the left, it's just about, okay, let's just plan. When did it happen? Who is it? Where is it? What is it? How? So it's very different in a sense that for left, we just want them to have a gist of the story. We want them to have sort of like a body and sort of a plan of the story. But on the right, we want them to have clear distinction of what are you writing, which point are you trying to answer, and which category does your text belongs to. So is it a conflict? Is it the resolution? We have to have a clear definition so that it helps with their writing, so they can write smoothly and they can ensure that they are on topic. Because many of them say, they go off topic, and then in the end they're talking about a totally different thing. So we have to have this clear category to show them like, okay, you have to follow this so that you know that you are on the right track. Okay, so you may have a lot of questions now actually. So I understand that you may have a lot of questions on like what is going to happen, what am I supposed to do? So now Miss Jade and I are going to share more about the different subjects that we have, and we are going to share some of our insights with you. All right.
Yeah.
So Miss Jade, do you want to start?
Thank you, Ms. Kristen. So I think, again, coming back to the two-pronged approach, okay? So basically what we're going to talk about is how our classes, our kindergarten 2 classes at the Eton Academy, how we're helping your child bridge the gap from K2 to primary 1. But of course, these are also strategies that you can apply at home to help your child to support their learning at home, right? So based on what we've shared, we know that for children to have a successful transition from preschool to primary school, they need to become confident learners, they need to become resilient learners, and they also need to become independent learners. These are the 3 big things that we've noticed really helps a child to succeed. So at the Eton Academy, that's really what we try to achieve as well, starting from our very young learners, even from the moment they join us, maybe at nursery 1 or nursery 2. So we do have 2 taglines, which we strongly believe in. So one is curiosity in motion, one is develop your voice. So what curiosity in motion means is that we really want to foster this curiosity and interest in learning, because we all know that with intrinsic motivation, that's really what prompts all of us to learn better. And it's the same way for children as well. So what we do in mathematics is we use various different mediums. For example, literature, we use books, we use videos, we use hands-on activities, we use games to spark this interest for learning, right? So why is this important? Because when they have an interest in learning, that is when they become confident as well, to want to learn, to make the effort to learn. Secondly, develop your voice. This is really important to build their confidence. So what we do is we have a lot of discussion groups, a lot of discussion questions where children are invited to share their thoughts. And we come from a perspective where we would not directly tell them, I'm sorry, your answer is wrong. Your friend is correct instead. What we try to do is we try to provoke their thinking. We want to have open-ended discussions where they discuss why is this answer perhaps correct and why perhaps this is wrong instead. All right. We also encourage them to speak up when they require help, which is again very important when they go to primary school, instead of sitting there and just waiting for the teacher to notice you. All right. So that is some of the things that we do in mathematics as well. So Miss Kristen, what do you guys do in English?
For English, for example, curiosity emotion, we actually conduct experiments. And like what you mentioned just now, we watch videos too. So we conduct experiments, we get them to observe what is happening, and they have their own ideas on what is going on. They have their own explanations on why is this happening. They can just share with their friends. They will actually find out what is happening, and they can actually have a discussion on why they think this is happening, and they can actually share freely. So we are actually trying to encourage open discussion, open conversations, so that everyone can have a say in what they think. Because some of them might say, this is wrong, that is right. But I always tell them, they can have their own ideas, because it's their ideas, it belongs to them. They can think however they want. They are free to express however they feel. So we always get them to get hands-on, try it out, and share it. Feel free to share it with your friends, because there's never a wrong answer.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kristen, for sharing. I think the other thing that we would like to talk about would be classroom appropriate behaviors. So I think in the spirit of this, what we really want to do is we want to cultivate good habits, good learning habits that's going to carry through with them all the way into their adult years as well. So what this entails is we want to teach them to make good choices. That's really what underscores everything that we want to teach them in our classrooms. Because again, in primary school, they're not going to be handheld by their teachers. They're going to make a lot of choices on their own. And that's where they have to pick up this skill. So for example, if you look at the pictures below, it could be things like, choosing to sit nicely during story time. Or they could also choose to be speaking up and shouting and, may have to be excluded, or we have to maybe postpone story time, for example, right? And we also teach them basic routines, such as how to pack their bags. You'll be surprised at the struggles children have at simply putting their water bottle into their bags and putting their pencil cases into their bags. So these are all skills that they have to pick up, especially as they develop their motor skills. And I think also very surprisingly, one thing, even with my upper primary students, they will come and say, I forgot to bring my homework. And when you ask them why, they'll say, oh, my mommy didn't put it in my bag. So, these are habits that if we do not cultivate from young, it really stays with them throughout their life. So this is what we would like to encourage. And if you also see, we also have visual aids in our classroom, such as maybe voice levels, for them to decide, which might be a classroom appropriate level that they should be at. Right? So these are just some simple examples of how we teach them to make good choices and classroom appropriate behaviors that we have. So now I'm going to go a little bit more into the academics aspect. All right. So in terms of mathematics, we're going to talk about the continuity in modality. So what we mean is that we're going to talk about the CPA approach. So maybe I would like to do a very, very quick poll here, Mr. Hugh, if you don't mind. Who knows what the CPA approach is?
Well, maybe you can just put it in the chat if you
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, you
what
put
the
in the chat.
CPA is.
All right. So just to tell you briefly, the CPA chat is the concrete pictorial abstract approach, and that is really what underscores our mathematical teaching. So an example would be if the child is learning time at a concrete stage, they'll be using things like the mini clocks. So they could be able to spin the clock. If I ask them why it's 1 hour after 2 o'clock, they would actually spin the clock hands to find the answer. Moving on to pictorial, it'll be things like they'll look at their worksheets and the picture of the clock is printed on the worksheet, and they have to figure out maybe by drawing to find the answer. All right. Moving on to abstract, it will be things like the question is in the journal or in the worksheet, but there are no pictures. It will simply state what is 1 hour after 2 o'clock. So they may have to visualize the clock in their minds and work it out in their mind. So why it's important and how we do it at TA is that even in kindergarten, we bring them through the 3 stages. All right, and this is very important because when they go to primary 1, they're expected to do a lot of things using the pictorial and abstract approach. So they need to be able to develop such skills to work at these levels. And this is challenging for children at this age because they are concrete thinkers. Okay, the next one, we're going to talk about progression in skills. So what we have is we actually have early exposure to foundational skills. For example, we teach them the column algorithm to subtract and to add. We expose them to multiplications, how to do groups, equal groups. We also expose them to different question types. So we teach them how to answer multiple choice questions. We teach them how to answer word problems where they require question analysis. So how this is important, right, is also because the earlier you expose them to these questions, the more time they have to build up the skills. And that also then translates to a more confident learner. And now I'm going to hand the time over to Ms. Chrisanne to go through the English portion of it.
All right, so very quickly, okay? So in this sentence, the dog runs fast. Can you spot the error here? Because if you are not looking close enough, you might realize that it should be the dogs run fast. So if a child asks, if a child asks you, why is it the dogs run fast and not the dogs runs fast? How are you going to explain what's the reason behind it and what's the concept behind it? So just a quick sharing is subject-verb agreement. And then next question that they might ask, what is subject-verb agreement? How do you explain it to a child in a sense that they are able to understand what's the purpose of subject-verb agreement? How does it work? Why is it happening? How easy do you think it will be to explain this concept to a child? Just have a quick think about it. How easy do you think it is to explain subject-verb agreement to a child?
I think even as a teacher, it's going to be quite challenging for me to explain this.
Yeah, correct. Because it comes so naturally for us because we are so used to it. But for a child, they don't really understand what is going on. Why is there an additional letter S behind the word run? Why do we have to put the letter S? So this is what we are trying to do in TA, which we are trying to identify the different concepts and we explain to them in simpler ways so that they can understand better. So on the left, you can see the subject-verb agreement. We use the Superman rule. So I always tell my students the Superman rule. Singular and plural, is it singular, many people, or just one person? And are they strong or weak? So if it's singular, they are very weak. They need Superman's help. So that's why we add the letter S behind the verb. And if it's plural, many people are working together, they are really strong. They don't need Superman's help any further. So there's no letter S behind the verb. So we use different concepts like this. We use different techniques like this to make it simpler for them to answer, to understand, and also to apply it to the questions that we have. All right, and then we also go through the phonics. We have diphthongs, we have digraphs, we have like R-controlled vowels. These are different things that it comes so naturally to us, but we have to bring it up and tell students the different sounds and how is it different, because they all look the same. Letters can look the same, they can come in different combinations, but they all sound different. So we have different ways to actually explain to them and to tell them how is it different and why is it different. And we try to incorporate it into games. We try to play games to make it fun. We test their understanding, but at the same time, we allow them to have fun, let loose, and also to experience having fun and playing with their peers in class. So it's not so dull. It gets them moving, it gets them excited, it gets them pumping to get them excited for what's coming. And also, for example, just a simple comprehension. We cover many different question types. For example, the first picture on the left, true or false. On the right, you have to number the sequence, which comes first, what comes next, what's the last. So, and also, we also have different questions for them to look for in the passage. Or why do you think the writer is feeling this way? How do you know? And also on the right, we have the 5 senses question. So this also helps them with the story writing in the future because we want them to use as much expression as possible when writing stories and when answering those free writing questions. So these are all ways that we can introduce to them, and these are all different ways that we actually get them to practice once in a while. We introduce it to them, and then we will still add components like this in our journals once in a while to sort of to have a quick recap and also to like revise on what we taught so that they understand what is going on, and they can apply specifically to which question type. And also for story writing, so the picture on the left, we have to talk about it. We have to circle the key points. What are the things that we have to talk about? We have helping words, helping phrases to help them with their story writing. And then we'll move on to planning because the picture is there and it might come to them as like, oh, it's just picture. They have so many ideas, they want to talk about it. But we have to make sure the story flows. So that's where the planning comes in. We ensure that they know what to do and they know how to write it. So we have planning every time we write a story so that they can organize their thoughts properly and they can actually share their ideas in class. And everyone has a part to play when we discuss things like this. Okay, so I think Miss Jade and I are done with our sharing. If you have any questions, feel free to throw us any questions, and I'm pretty sure Miss Jade and Mr. Hugh, we are all ready to answer the questions.
Yeah, you know what? I think we can actually start by answering a question that was asked earlier. And that question was so does the Eton Academy classes follow MOE, what is expected in MOE? Are we aligned with MOE, right? So like especially for like maths and science, because there's very little tolerance for creative answers, right? According to this parent, which I absolutely agree. So yeah, maybe Miss Jade, maybe you can talk about maths?
Yeah, so I think this parent is right in saying that there is little tolerance for creative answers in the sense that 3 plus 3 will give you 6. There is no other answer that you can arrive at. But I think what we try to encourage is really for them to explain how did they get the answer. So one example that I can give you would be what we did previously, really recently actually, in terms of measurement. So we all know that when we measure something using the ruler, we tend to start measuring from 0, right? And then we would see where it ends, and we could say that, oh, maybe the pencil is 7 centimeters. We had a question in our worksheets, in our journals, that where the pencil was actually placed at the start point was actually at 3 cm, and the end point was perhaps at 7 cm. So the question was, how long is the pencil? Is the pencil 7 centimeters long? So of course, there's only one correct answer. But what the children were able to come up with is different ways as to why the answer is wrong, why it's not 7 cm. For example, they told me, oh, because it's not placed at the 0 mark. We didn't start from the 0 mark. Some children say, oh, because the ruler is not at the correct place. Or they could also come up with different answers as to how to get the correct answer. For example, some children will say, oh, how about we push the pencil all the way back to the 0 point so that we can see where it actually stops. Another child will say, oh, actually, we don't have to do that. We cannot push the pencil, right? It's printed. So what we can do is we can count the intervals, right? So already from there, you can see that even though there is only one answer, one correct answer, there are actually many ways they can arrive at the answer. So this is what we are talking about when we say, we want to encourage diversity in thinking. We want to encourage creative thinking so that they can think out of the box. They can come up with different strategies to solve one question. Yeah. So I think in terms of whether the classes and our curriculum is aligned to MOE expectations, I would say that yes, we are very much aligned. And our curriculum does aim to prepare your child for the eventual PSLE, 6 years or 7 years down the road. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Jade. I mean, yes, even for English and for science, we are closely aligned. Of course, when you come here, our approach is always to teach them more. Basically expand their knowledge as much as we can, right? So that's why when they come here, they definitely learn. The breadth of what they're learning is definitely much wider than what they learn in school. Yeah, but we are aligned with MOE syllabus as well. Okay, so thank you for that question. Okay, very quickly, we also have a few more questions here. Let me see. Okay, this question was asked a bit earlier, about this parent's child currently is in a class of about 11 students and is sometimes slow to transition between activities. So this parent's wondering how can he or she prepare her child for a class of up to, like, let's say 30 or even more in a primary school. Yeah. I think in terms of transitioning between activities, like what was shared earlier in terms of being used to routine, I think that's important. In the primary school, I mean, basically the children, they live by the school bell, don't they? Yeah, the school bell will tell them what's happening now. It's like the bell rings, oh, okay, it's time for this. Bell rings, time for that. So I think getting used to certain routines like that would help. If your child is, a little more reserved, perhaps not so comfortable in larger settings, maybe expose your child to more crowded areas even, and give your child opportunities to do different things in that setting. In our own classes at Eton Academy, unfortunately, we don't have class size of 30 because we think that we focus on a smaller class size so that the teachers can give each child more attention. So yeah, we don't have a class size of 30. Yeah. But yeah, like what was shared earlier, I think, getting used to certain routines, getting them prepared for such things that they'll face in primary one will definitely help. Yeah. Okay. So this is an interesting question. Maybe either Miss Chrisanne or Miss J can answer this. It says here, okay, whatever has been presented, these all conducted in our K2 classes, because this grandparent, is a grandparent, okay, says that currently his or her grandchild is not seeing that in the class that he or she is attending. I'm assuming here, of course, it's at a different place, right? Maybe one of you can take that.
So I think for what I've shared for mathematics, yes, the stuff that I've shared, the materials that I've shared in today's sharing is our actual class materials. So they would, if your child has been attending the Eton Academy, you should have seen these materials or these signages, develop your voice and things like that. Of course, some of this question, for example, multiplication, it has not been covered yet. It's actually going to be covered in our upcoming term, in term 4, which is where we really have a big emphasis on bridging, from the K2 to the P1 level. Yep.
Yeah. So it is K2 curriculum, right, Miss J?
It is K2 curriculum.
Right. What about Miss Chrisanne? What do you share just now? Is it K2?
Yes, definitely. Everything that I've shared is all from our K2 curriculum, which we actually covered like the past 3 weeks. So everything that I've showed on my slides were all what we covered for the past 3 weeks. So now we're mainly covering like comprehension, story writing, word order, which is also what they will actually do in primary 1.
Right. Okay, that's good to know. So I hope we've answered that question. Okay, well, we have a couple more questions. One is about holiday camps. So do we have holiday camps for the younger kids? And the answer is yes, we do. All right, please check our webpage and our social media blasts for updates on that, because during the holidays we do have some camps for this. Specifically to transit into P1, we don't have that, but we have lots of things which actually lend to that as well. Okay, so it's not specifically to go to P1. Yeah. But yeah, we do have quite a few holiday camps, which you can check our webpage and social media platforms as well. Okay. And I think I have one more question here. How much general knowledge will a primary school child need to know? Oh, that's interesting. Would any one of you want to try that one?
Well, that's a very, very interesting question. I think this is the first time someone has asked me this question, actually.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think in my experience, it's not really about general knowledge per se. I think what's more important is actually their life skills. That's actually more important. So for example, are they able to manage their own belongings? Are they able to follow their timetable? For example, are they able to purchase food at the canteen? Yeah, I think these are more important, to be honest, rather than general knowledge. I believe that general knowledge will be solely taught to them in school as well.
And
Yep.
also like from what I understand, general knowledge, maybe reading. Reading is really important because with a big class, they are given a worksheet or their textbooks. They have to read, and on their own, the teacher won't be standing by their side the whole time. So having uh knowing to read is a very important skill to have, because that is how they know what they're supposed to do and what questions are they supposed to attempt. Because they can speak, they can ask questions, but knowing how to read is going to help them whether they know what the question is even asking.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Miss Kristen. And you know, of course, if they know things, uh if they know more general knowledge when it comes to different texts that they encounter in school, all right, they can probably relate better to these things. Like, you know, maybe they learn about things like the moon landing, for example, you know, right? So then they might have some idea of what that is about, but they don't, it's not something that's required, but I think it's beneficial, right? You know,
Yeah.
for children to you know, be well versed in these things as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Let me just go on to the next question here. This one is asking about CCA. Okay, so if the school has lots of CCA, you know, how do we know which should the child choose? Okay, maybe I'll take this one. I guess when it comes to CCA, what's important, of course, is interest, because I mean, I think that it's important that the child is keen on that particular CCA, and of course, if at that age, perhaps they are not even sure if they like it, right? So it's good to expose them to things like that. And, you know, I mean, if they like it, then good, they can continue. If they don't, then perhaps they could make a switch or something like that. Yeah. But also the other thing to consider is the time, taken up for that particular CCA as well. So there are a lot of things to consider. But the first thing I would go for is the child's interest as well. I know that to me that's the most important thing. Yeah. Okay. Right. I think those are all the questions at this point. So again, if you have any other questions, you can just put it in, you know, hopefully we can answer them before we end the session. I'm sorry we're running a bit over time, but we still have just a few more slides to share with all the attendees today. Yeah, right. So this one, basically, this is just a promotion, right, that we're having at this point. If you are keen to find out more about the Eton Academy, all right, you can actually scan that QR code, okay, and the promo code webinar. And what will happen is that if you sign up for a trial class, you get a complimentary second trial class to attend as well. So basically, it's kind of like two for the price of one. Yeah. And I think that that's a great deal. We have quite a few trials coming in. So please yeah, consider us. You know, your child might actually really enjoy the classes with us. I'm pretty sure they will. Okay. Yeah. And yes, I think that's all for this evening. I would like to thank all the attendees this evening. Thank you for joining us. And again, if you have any questions at all, you know, feel free to reach out to us through email or you know, even popping by one of our centers, you know, having a word with our teachers there. We're more than willing to speak to you. Yeah. So yes, thank you very much once again. Thank you very much, Miss Jade and Miss Chrisanne. I think the parents learned quite a bit today, all right, from all your sharing. Okay, so that's all, and I would just like to wish everyone a very good night and see you at our centers. Okay, bye everyone.
Bye-bye.
Okay, yes,